Good day, everyone. I am Keith Zemen Biochati and I am from Group 4 ML Lab. And today, I'll discuss to you about the informational risk of disinformation. Now, what are the informational risks of disinformation? Well, it is about the relationship between types of abuse and damages in case of disinformation. And when we talk about informational risk, we have three categories. The first one being psychological, the second, physical, and the third, political and commercial. Now, let's talk about psychological first. Now, what is psychological? Well, psychological refers to the mind of an individual, of a person. It's about how this information affects a person's emotions, thinking, confidence, and mental health. Now, towards the next category, physical. It refers to the body. It's about how this kind of risk of information can move towards to the real world. It's about disinformation that causes physical danger, violence, intimidation, or real world harm. Lastly, political and commercial. It refers to the political body. It focuses on how this information affects politics, elections, businesses, media, and public trust. Now, let us talk about the types of abuse and damage of each category. But first, let me address something. These words, abuse and damage, they may sound the same and may have similar meanings, but they are different throughout. They both have differences. Now, the first word, abuse, is about the harmful action being done, and damage is the harmful result or effect. So we can see that they don't really have the same meaning. It's two vastly different words. So let us so without further ado, let us talk about the types of abuse in psychological. The first types of abuse is insult. What is insult? Well, it's using offensive or degrading language online. Now, for example here, we can see on a post with comments saying, "Bobo mo naman, kadiri ka, wala kang kwenta." That's an insult, and it is pretty easy to explain. But if you guys want a more relatable example, insult also appears in games such as Mobile Legends, where we can see that they both said, "Putang ina, autolock naggago talaga." That is insult. Let us move to the next abuse. Stereotype. Stereotype means spreading oversimplified or prejudiced beliefs about groups. Now, for example, here in a comment in a post is that one participant says that OFW equals mayaman. Sila nag-enjoy sa ibang bansa, tapos tayo dito naghihirap lang. But OFWs are not all that rich. The only reason why they chose to work abroad is because they wanted to help their family elevate their income. Because here in the Philippines, an unfortunate truth is that our currency is very irrelevant compared to other currencies in other countries. That is why they chose to work abroad, and not all of them are rich. The next abuse is scapegoat. Scapegoat is blaming a person or group for society's problems. An example of problem is traffic. Here we can see in the comments that grabe na talaga mga jeepney driver. Ngayon, sila talaga dahilan ng traffic, walang disiplina. Even though jeepneys are not the only causes of traffic, there are other several factors, which is over congestion, cars and motorcycles, and a lot of people choosing to avoid using public transport, which a lot of vehicles will appear in the road. Now, it's not just jeepneys that cause traffic. The next abuse is ostracism. Ostracism is excluding people socially. But here's the catch: cancel culture is included. Here, guys, do you know who this is? This is a celebrity, an influencer, and it appears that she smeared chocolate cake all on the forehead of this worker's face. Now, this celebrity is Alex Gonzaga. Here, because she smeared chocolate cake all over the face of this worker, a lot of netizens online uh, was angry and caused her a lot of backlash. And because of that, she had to double down and apologize to everyone and even to her family. And she is sorry for causing their pain and embarrassment. That is ostracism. The next abuse is slander. Slander is spreading false accusations that damage someone's reputation. Another example is this. This woman is Christy Fermin. And here, Christy Fermin allegedly spoke about Bia Alonso's personal life, businesses, and personal relationships that were not true. And because of that, Bia Alonso was angry and had to get an arrest warrant for Christy Fermin. Now, that is a case of slander. And because of that, Christy Fermin had to apologize, and she stated that it was never her intention to defame, offend, or harm Ms. Alonso. That is slander. Now, let us move on into the types of damage and psychological. The first types of damage is fear. Fear means feeling unsafe or worried because of perceived danger or harm. An example of this is here in this picture. You see a lot of policemen. They're talking about illustrating something in a black in a whiteboard. Now, this is because there was a supposed bomb threat in MMSU here back then last year in November 23. And because there was a bomb threat, the campus was cleared. Philippine National Police came, and a lot of people felt fear. They were scared because of a perceived danger that was a bomb threat. Now that is fear. The next types of damage is loss of self-esteem. It makes someone lose confidence in themselves. Now this is something that we all experience every day in social media, such as TikTok. Here we can see the comments saying cringe, parang iwan, sayaw pa more, haha, ano ba yan, sayang oras. Here, these comments attack the person's confidence. And because of that, the person lost confidence of themselves. That is loss of self-esteem. The next type of damage is anxiety. Anxiety is a feeling of constant worry exposed to harmful online content. An example of this is the news about the Senate shooting incident in lockdown. Because of this, we can say for sure that people watching the news would feel worry, would feel anxiety. But because this news was sensational and a lot of people were seeing this, uh, what's this called, in the entire Philippines, disinformation will happen. Lots of misinformation, malinformation, and disinformation will appear. Such as, for example, in relation to the Senate shooting incident, a post will claim that a reporter was shot down, or a politician, or the police, or the one that shot was a criminal. That is all sorts of misinformation that can make a person feel anxiety. The next type of damage is hate speech. Hate speech is language that turns identity into harm for insult, often making people feel unsafe or inferior online. An example of this are these comments saying, imagine you only live once, tapos Bisaya ka pa. This is hate speech. These comments target Bisaya, the Bisaya identity. Now, Because of this, a lot of comments, a lot of people will fear ostracized. It's also ostracized. The next damage is self-censorship. It it is when people stop expressing themselves because they fear backlash, attacks, or punishment. Now, on our Now, on our research that I found in Google is that Philippines is one of the world's most dangerous countries for journalists. Because why? Many journalists were the target of threats and lawsuits, while women journalists are subjected to specific gender-based threats, such as threats of rape, cyber harassment, and disclosure of personal details, and so on. Because of those threats, people stop expressing themselves, and that is self-censorship. Now, that was the last one, and the main idea of psychological is that disinformation attacks emotions, confidence, and freedom of expression. Now, let us move to the next category, and that is physical. The types of use of physical is firstly threat. Threat is warning someone that they will be harmed. Now, here is a text message that was received by someone online. Here, God see that they insulted the person and said, kung ayaw mong pati, pamilya mo ay ipapatay ko. So it says that he or she will kill the family of the person who received this message. Now that is threat. The next type of abuse is hacking. What is hacking? Well, it is unauthorized access to accounts or data. Now, a notable example of this here in Cydio is the Higala app. Here you can see the front end page of the Higala app was changed into something different. It says hooliganism. Uh, I don't know what this means, but it's something that can cause a lot of people to feel worry or fear that their sensitive information in the app was breached and accessed. Here on an article is that a contact tracing app was hacked, but fortunately the data was secure. Here in Cagayan de Oro City, there was no data breach in the contact tracing system Higala app, but it was really hacked, but only the front end portal. The next type of abuse is intimidation. Now, what is a notable example? What is the meaning of intimidation? Is that it is trying to scare people into silence. A notable example of this is red tagging in the Philippines. What does this mean? Well, it's the malicious labeling of human rights activists, journalists, news reporters, innocent people, students being labeled as terrorists or people that are criminals, very violent criminals. Now, that is red tagging, and because of that, people become scared. The next abuse is bullying. Bullying is just repeated harassment online. And because of this, Raymond J. Malinay Lopez was an example of being bullied online. This person here was falsely accused of being HIV positive and being gay. Some random person online found his post and had an insane idea that he or she would think it was funny to state that this guy was HIV positive. And because of this, this became infamous overnight. And a lot of people were hopping on a trend of cyberbullying him. Now, that is an example of bullying online. Let us move on to the types of damage in physical. Firstly, we have violence. Violence means physical harm caused by harassment, threats, or incitement. A sensational example of this is this woman. This is Zara Alvarez, and here she was a human rights activist, but she was labeled as a terrorist by the same example I shared earlier, red tagging. Here we can see here in an article is that Zara Alvarez, a Philippine health and human rights activist, was gunned down by unknown assailants. She was harmed physically and she died, unfortunately. And that is an example of violence. Let us move on into wounds. Wounds is actual injuries, either physical or emotional. What does this mean? Here, you can see a lot of people here in a barangay in Quezon City, Philippines in 2020. Here, there was a individual from a TV crew that allegedly said that food packs would be distributed to them. But upon reaching the area, the residents discovered that there was no food or cash distribution. The reason why a lot of people were eager to receive food or cash distribution during 2020, the panic for the COVID-19 pandemic was very, very, what's this called? Very, very severe at the time. And because there was no food or cash distribution, the people there, the residents, rioted against the government there, the officials, and they protested. And because of those protests, a lot of people were injured and emotionally distraught. Now, that is an example of wounds. The next type of damage is self harm. Self harm is a person hurting themselves due to emotional distress or cyberbullying. A sensational example of this is Eman Antienza. She was a victim of cyberbullying, and the factor really helping to that was her emotional distress. She already had a mental disorder and she was depressed. Uh, this woman was very popular online. A lot of people complimented her for her looks and the way she talked about her life, personal life, that she was neglected by her real parents and abused by her nanny. And although a lot of people were encouraging her to live on and to see more of life, there were a lot of trollers online, and that caused her to become even more depressed and caused her to unfortunately kill herself by suicide. That is an example of self harm. The next example is immobility. Immobility is when people become afraid to participate socially or politically. Here in a live stream in Taguig City in a national high school, is that although it's blurry, I can just explain it to you guys. A random girl online commented in this live stream that she will kill all the students and that she allegedly had a bomb planted in the high school. And because of that, the school was locked down. It caused panic and alarm in the community. And because of that, people became afraid to go near the 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 high school. And here we can see that classes were also suspended and authorities immediately deployed a special weapons and tactics team. Here the school was immobilized. Uh, Officials and experts in bombs were called and tried to defuse the alleged supposed bomb, and people were just scared, also students, and they just didn't want to go near the school. The next example is devastation. Devastation is severe emotional, physical, or financial destruction. A notable example is that here in an article we can see that sources claim complete collapse of leading Philippines junket Darwin Group. Here online, people supposedly claim that Darwin Group had a complete collapse. The company, uh, here it triggered an immediate real-world financial panic. Terrified high net worth investors rushed to secure their funds, creating a self-fulfilling bank run. Now, this caused the sudden freeze of millions of pesos in capital and the immediate halt of operations. Because some posts claim that the Win Group collapsed, this business actually faced a true collapse, and it suffered financial destruction that I think was said to take 2 or 3 years to profit back. Now, the main idea of physical is that this information is not just words online because it can hurt bodies, can hurt people, the business, can incite violence among the people, and discourage participation among friends, and it can also destroy communities. So let us move on into political and commercial. The first type of abuse in this category is disclosed data. It is when private or confidential information is shared without permission. Now, here in a research I found on Google is that the Philippines records 624,400 leaked accounts in the first quarter of 2026. Here we can understand that 624,000 accounts had their data leaked. Discussing furthermore is that it is the 21st globally ranked in data breaches, and that it had a 76% increase compared to the previous quarter of 2025. Now, it is noted that other users, Filipino users, are at potentially risk of account takeover. Now, it is very scary that our accounts here in the Philippines are vulnerable to having our data breach, our sensitive information. The next abuse is interference. Interference is manipulating systems, communication, or public opinion. An example of this is a Facebook post. You could see this guy saying, quoting, "There is no use for emergency powers. We will oppose it in the Senate." This post was posted by Solid Sarara Z Duterte 2022. I guess this account was a fan of Sara Duterte. But the thing is, this was a fake account. This is a bot account. This account posted misinformation, malicious disinformation, and that deceived a lot of people's opinions regarding to this quotation and their opinions politically. And because of those, a lot of people engage in discussions that were mostly made up of lies, of misinformation. The next abuse is activism. Now, activism is organized actions supporting a political or social cause. This can be good and this can be bad. And, and although both of them can be good and bad, disinformation can severely affect movements. Here in a research, the disinformation threats in the Philippines have 38% of activists or activist group made up entirely. Here you can see that in early 2025, amid a politically charged midterm election season, we saw that VP Sara Duterte impeached on corruption charges and former President Rodrigo Duterte arrested by the ICC for crimes against humanity tied to his brutal drug war. Now, because of these two sensational news that happened, a lot of disinformation have appeared regarding to these two things, and that is activism. The next abuse is conspiracy. Now, conspiracy is false beliefs claiming secret plots without evidence. An example is this: is here we can see by a post by Rappler is that it stated that SMNI News Facebook pages were suspended. How so? It's because SMNI offended a member of Congress, and the tactics were being used against journalists and newsrooms also. But why were they suspended just for offending a member of Congress? Was it factual? Was it fake? Well, it was fake. This person here, Ferdinand Martin, Romualdez, the SMNI News stated that this person, what is this called? This person spent 1.8 billion pesos in travel expenses overseas. But that was not true. That was a conspiracy simply made up by SMNI News. And because of that, SMNI News were suspended. Now, that is conspiracy. Let us move into clickbait. Are misleading headlines designed to attract attention and clicks. For example, this thumbnail, NATO dumating na. Pinalibutan ang China. Gera na. NATO tatapusin ang China. We can understand that this thumbnail says that NATO arrived in China Sea and they surrounded China. But in fact, this was fake. Uh, the real content there was just a lot of updates about the current political situation between NATO and China. It is not true that NATO was surrounding China and was preparing for war. And let us move on into the types of damage in this category. The first damage is destabilization. Destabilization is weakening trust in governments, media, or institutions. And regarding this, ABS-CBN, if you guys remember, a lot of people were expressing grief, sadness over why ABS-CBN was signing off. Well, it was because I guess a license was expired, and that is the reason why they signed off. But during that time, a lot of Facebook posts appeared that the biggest Philippine tax evaders were the ABS-CBN. And because of those, a lot of people were skeptical. And a lot of people believed immediately without checking the facts. And because of those, even though ABS-CBN already verified that they had no unpaid taxes, people, the audience still lost their trust. Their trust were weakened in ABS-CBN and they moved on into another news channel. And another type of damage is polarization. Polarization is society becomes divided into opposing groups. It's very simple to explain. An example of this is between Bongbong Marcos and Sara Duterte politically. And online, it could be about here, for example, uh, an influencer was claimed to be a sexual predator. Now, there will be two groups, one claiming that he is indeed a sexual predator, and one claiming that he is not a sexual predator. And that is polarization. Another type of damage is speculation, hoax crush. It means that people believe rumors and false claims without evidence. And I'll give you guys some context. Here back then, North Cotabato was rocked by a 6.3 magnitude earthquake, and in Davao City, it felt a intensity 5 earthquake. And while the earthquake caused damages in areas near the epicenter, another disaster occurred near coastal areas of Davao City. And the disaster was an unverified information that a tsunami may be on its way. Now, many people living in the city's coastal areas were thrown into panic and confusion, and due to those misinformation, 16 coastal barangays conducted evacuation to higher grounds. They believed that the tsunami was on its way, even though no one verified it, even though no one checked if it's true, even though you cannot predict a tsunami coming to your way. And because of this, authorities apprehended a mother and daughter who was the one that circulated fake news of the tsunami alert in October 16th. Now, this was the picture taken at the scene when they apprehended the mother and daughter. Another damage is electoral fraud. It is manipulation or misinformation that affects elections and voting. Here, what can you guys understand from this image? Here, Robredo Pangilinan enjoyed landslide victory overseas abroad. It had 3,016 interactions, 2,989 interactions, and another 2,989 interactions. Well, three of them are fake, are misleading, are false. And because they were false, a lot of people still interacted with them. And it affected a lot of opinions. Here, we can see that because a lot of misinformation were happen, it claimed that Bayan Muha, Anak Paus, Kabataan, ACT teachers, and Gabriela were disqualified even though they weren't. Another party lists were also disqualified by Comelec because of their links with the Communist Party of the Philippines, even though it was not true. It was debunked by Comelec. And another circulating false claims were Paul, Paul cheating, which was vote vying, and another, and because of this, a lot of fact checks were happening. And during during while the fact checks were happening, and before that, a lot of VCM vote counting machines were broken down. They broke down repeatedly. 1,800 in all delayed the voting or turning voters away. They manipulated the opinion of the masses regarding to the elections. Another example for political and commercial is blackmail. Blackmail is using sensitive information to threaten or control someone. Now, what best material to blackmail someone is explicit content, explicit videos. Here in an article, we can read that a man in Tarlac City was arrested for blackmailing his female ex-partner with their explicit videos. Now, that is blackmail. And according to the ACG, the victim decided to separate from the suspect, then began to threaten her that he would spread videos of their intimate moments that was caught on closed circuit television camera. She was not aware that there was a camera recording all of their acts, and because of those, that woman was under control of that man, and that is blackmail. And that was the last type of damage, and the main idea of political and commercial is that at this level, disinformation threatens democracy, public trust, political stability, and national unity. Our our unity as people of the Philippines. The harm becomes societal, not just personal. Now, since I have talked about the types of abuse and damage in the three categories, now let us talk about the solutions by type of actor. What can a country like the Philippines do to solve all of those or mitigate all of those type of abuse and damage? Here we have our first solution, and that is self-regulation. Now, what actor does self-regulation? They are the mass media. They are radios, televisions, uh, newspapers. And another actor is the social networks such as Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, and YouTube, and etc. And here, self regulation means that these organizations police themselves without government intervention. What does this mean? Well, it means that these actors have their own rules and laws that that what's it called, mitigate false information or dismiss them entirely. So, firstly, on the first actor of self-regulation are the mass medias. Let's talk about their actions first. Now, what can mass media do? They can verify. Verifying means fact checking information before publishing. The other actions they could do is confirm sources and evidence. And another action is dilute. What is dilute? Well, they can reduce the spread of false information by providing accurate information. So they can just dismiss other other false information and replace them with something that is more accurate and that came from verifying. Another action is mediate. Mediate means present balanced viewpoints and explain complex issues. Well, in simple terms, this just means that they will fairly make the the information more accessible, more understandable, more easier to understand by common people, even if they are not too literately educated. And after actions, we have criteria. Criteria of mass media are grids and indexes, which is the standards used to evaluate news quality. And another criteria is the codes of ethics. They are the rules journalists follow regarding truthfulness and fairness. And another criteria would be the editorial independence. And it is when news organizations should not be controlled by politicians or businesses. They should be independent by those people. So their information will be truly accurate and not manipulated by those politicians or business for profit or for fame. Here, an example of those actions and criteria is ABS-CBN fact checking. Here, you can see that ABS-CBN fact check a post about a certain person, about party list representative Izzy Elizalde Co being arrested. A photo was taken of him being arrested in the Czech Republic, and they verified it that the, that the person who posted this fake image was using Google Gemini to generate an AI image. And this is an example of them fact checking and verifying the information. And they diluted it and mediated the information. It was true that Zaldiko was arrested and detained in Prague, but there was no image about the arrest. Here we can see that he's arrested, detained in Prague after crossing into the Czech Republic with a proper documentation. And there was no statement saying that there was an image. And that is an example. Moving on, another actor, social networks. Actions of social networks are filter. What is filter? Well, it's using algorithms or moderators to detect false content such as AI or other claims that are too good to be true. And they can also suppress those content. They reduce the visibility of harmful misinformation. Something like uh, a famous celebrity was killed even though it was not real. They can suppress that kind of content or maybe even delete it. And another thing is demonetize. They demonetize creators. They prevent them from earning money from false content. So they can they can dismiss those creators that provide false content from profiting off of those false content. So because of those, people will not be more highly encouraged to post false information and disinformation in Facebook and YouTube. Another action they could do is share. They can promote verified and trustworthy information, and that is using algorithms. But how do they use algorithms to promote and verify trustworthy information? It's all about the engagement of the users. If something was, what is this called? If information was true and a lot of people were engaged, the algorithm of an app such as TikTok or YouTube, they can share it to other people, and uh, and not leaving out the fact that a moderator can also view and analyze the so-called content, and they can verify it, and that is how they can share and promote the verified and trustworthy information. Now, moving on to criteria. Firstly, it is access to quality. Reliable information should be easy to find, such as in YouTube. If you want information to, let's say, how to properly raise your dog, and you wanted it to be something true, not things like something like how to make your dog speak, like using literal human words. That's a clickbait. I mean, although, yeah, dogs can speak using human words, it's usually on the press of a button. You cannot expect to see a human dog literally speaking human words. And transparency. Transparency is that platforms should explain moderation decisions. It's about how platforms will suspend, delete, promote content creators, or their or what is this called, or having your content demonetized. That's transparency, so creators won't be left out, left out alone, wondering why they were suspended, or all of a sudden the algorithm and other users were exploring just their content. Another thing is accountability. It's when platforms must take responsibility for harmful content, not just the creators, but the platforms. So people will not just mm, will not just shame on the creator. Those platforms should have deleted the harmful content first before having a widespread audience expose themselves to it. And another criteria is loyalty, commitment to public interest rather than only profit. We don't want platforms such as YouTube, Facebook to only seek for profit. We want them to commit to public interest, because when platforms commit to public interest, a lot of people will find more verifiable and fact check information that is true, and not manipulated content that seeks only profit. Now, an example of this is here. From Rappler, there were screenshots of a false post about Vice Ganda. Uh, Vice Ganda was angry and she was called to the Senate, but that was fake. The claim was that the Senate will summon actor and comedian Vice Ganda for mocking Senate President Alan Peter Cayetano and his sister Senator Pia Cayetano in a skit during May 13th, just a couple of weeks back. But that was fake. It was just a skit. And the facts was that there was no Senate summons, resolutions, or order related to Vice Ganda's reenactment of the candidate Cayetano's Facebook Live broadcast. So there was really no news report that confirmed the summons for comedian. And the video itself would not provide any proof for its claim. that is only suggesting that vice ganda was should be made to explain for supposedly insulting the two senators. Now that is an example. Now the second solution is regulation. What actor does this? They are the governments, or governments of our country, the Department of Justice, the DICT, the PCO. Those are some examples. And regulation means the government creates laws and policies to address the information. So, self-regulation was about platforms using their own laws and policies can mitigate or dismiss this information entirely from their platforms. Now here, the government also creates laws and policies to address this information from all platforms that affects all platforms is what I mean. Here, the actions for regulation is that firstly, they legislate. What does legislate mean? They create laws against harmful disinformation, such as cyber level. Another action is finance. They will support public interest journalism and fact checking organizations, such as Rappler, and protect. They defend citizens and democratic institutions from manipulation, just as sec.ph. It is a fact checking uh, is a fact checking organization that protect mostly people from manipulated content relating to elections. Now, the criteria for regulation is sanctions. Sanctions mean the penalties for spreading harmful false information. So, so how would you make a law about disinformation if you do not give any penalties? And other penalties for spreading harmful false information could reach 1 to 6 years and 40,000 pesos in fines. And another criteria is media support. It's about funding for independent journalism. They fund those organizations that conducts journalism in all sorts of contents that are found in the Philippines. And counter narratives. It's when government communication that corrects false claims. Now, as I've said before, sec.ph, that's that's a counter narrative against disinformation of elections and politics. Here, an example is the Department of Justice. This is the Republic Act number 10175. What does this act do? Well, it defines cybercrime. It provides for a prevention. It even investigates, it suppresses, and the imposition of penalties, therefore, and for other purposes. Just what I have said before. And this is the example. Another solution is education. Now, what actors do education? Our civil society, the educated people of the Philippines, the schools, the universities, the NGOs, the non-government organizations, and community organizations. Education is focuses on making people less vulnerable to disinformation. Here, the actions for education is teach. Well, they teach people, students, they train them to identify false information from true information. Another action is mobilize. They encourage communities to promote accurate information. They will identify and dismiss those false information and locate the true accurate information and promote them and share them online. And look out. They also monitor misinformation trends. So whenever something like of a sensational news was that are very famous or infamous, they usually look out for false information that come with along with it. And defend. Defend is helping vulnerable groups targeted by disinformation, such as an example earlier when about a famous celebrity being accused as a sexual predator. If those if that famous celebrity was actually not a sexual predator, they can help that man being targeted by the disinformation. Now, the criteria for education is firstly media education, teaching media literacy skills, such as MIL. Our Sir Peter, good day to you, Sir Peter. Sir Peter teaches MIL skills to us. Another criteria is public campaigns, awareness campaigns about misinformation. So we could just conduct a campaign, whether online or in real life, uh, protesting or just making an awareness campaign regarding about misinformation. So people will less likely to believe a post that they see firsthand. Another criteria is observatories, organizations that monitor disinformation, as earlier, and class actions, collective community responses. It's basically how a community or group will respond to disinformation, or how they respond when they located the true accurate information, then whether share it or post it or debunk the claim and then post the true accurate information afterward. Here, an example is Deaf Ed Media and Information Literacy. What does this mean? It's the channel Deaf Ed and their what is this called? Educational video about media literacy. Here, this was actually posted in Prisms in ML. I think it was week 2 or week 1, and I remember watching this. So yeah. Now, lastly, our last solution is co-regulation. Now, which actors does this? Well, here's the catch. Everyone. Everyone does this. The mass media, social networks, the government, us. Co-regulation means all actors work together. Mhm. The media, the social media companies, government, civil society, and the citizens. Now, with what ac- what actions does co-regulation have? They promote, they encourage responsible information sharing. They provide only true and accurate information, no false information allowed. They evaluate each information that they see, and they continuously assess whether anti-disinformation efforts are effective if they are properly debunking all the false claims. And the criteria for this is governance mechanisms, systems that coordinate different actors. What does this mean? Basically, if you want, for example, since it's co-regulation and every actor works together to help prevent against disinformation, we would say social media platforms and the government. How can both of these work together to combat against disinformation? The laws of the government in a country or in a municipality can be applied to the platform in the current location of the user. is how they can combat against disinformation. Now, reports are regular assessments of misinformation and responses. Just as earlier about the elections, about the 2984, was it? About the interactions of the false elections. Those are regular assessments and they debunk those claims. Now, here's an example. Just as I've said earlier, check.ph. Now, check.ph was an initiative. It was a collaborative fact-checking project for the 2025 Philippines elections, and it is still used now. It is an initiative of academies, schools, universities, the media, the platforms, civil society, us, to counter disinformation and provide the public with verified information. And check the page will verify and fact check following claims such as platforms and campaign promises of candidates, election related, government agencies and other entities, and posts on social media, blogs, and other platforms. And they are also guided by the code of principles, such as the rules of ethics by journalists. That is check.ph. It's a collaborative effort of all actors to combat against disinformation. Now, what are the overall main media of all solutions? Well, it's that everyone together should cooperate to reduce the spread and impact of disinformation. And the goal is not only to remove fake news, but it's also to protect democracy, is to protect our mental health, prevent manipulation, being deceived by other people, and to help people, students like us, to make informed decisions online. And straight out from the chapter, from my part, a statement that I really love while making this presentation is that education is the best long-term solution because an educated public is less likely to believe or spread disinformation. I really resonate with this, guys. And thank you. That is all. So I hope that you guys, you viewers, understood a lot from this presentation. And if you guys have any questions or clarifications, just post them in the comment down below. And that is all. Thank you, everyone. Again, I'm Keith Zeman Buchati from Group 4 MIL Section Lab. Bye bye.